Yo, Shortboxed Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show. In this episode of The Shortboxed,
both BJ, my co-founder, and I were both lifelong hardcore comic book nerds, and at the same time we're both technologists. Nothing has really changed or evolved in decades. It was frustrating to us as collectors and as technologists. So we spent years complaining about just how hard and difficult it is and how complicated it is to do something as simple as buy and sell a comic book safely and easily. It's insane because it's a massive secondary market. We're talking billions of dollars changing hands every single year on what's essentially dinosaur technology, and we really realized nothing would ever change unless we did it ourselves. So that's pretty much what we did.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Shortboxed Podcast.
The Shortboxed Podcast is recorded live from Jacksonville, Florida.
Yo, Shortboxed Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. And if you're new to the show, welcome to the party. This is the Shortboxed Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about comics and the pop culture inspired by them. My name is Botter, and this is episode 397. Today, me, you, and the rest of the Shortboxed Nation will hear from Gene Miguel, the head honcho of Shortboxed.
Anybody who is into comics knows that name.
Gene is the CEO and co-founder of Shortboxed, one of the fastest growing marketplace apps to buy and sell comics. Not only is there a thriving community of collectors to be found on there, but some of the top dealers in the industry swear by it, and for good reason. And we here at the Shortboxed like what Shortboxed is doing for the comic. Look, it's going to be a tongue twister kind of day, all right? So bear with me, y'all. They're friends of the show is what you need to know. And many of you will recall the conversation we had with their head of marketing community, Mr. Ryan Crow, back in episode 387. That was right before Shortboxed hosted their first ever live event in May. It was called Shortboxed Live. Shortboxed has continued to push the envelope for comic buyers and sellers and has been making headlines thanks to some recent and groundbreaking updates to the app, like the inclusion of a completely free price database, the opportunity to buy and sell raw books. They're also rolling out an auction feature, and all of these things have been game changers and absolutely well received by collectors and sellers alike. Gene's going to tell us all about it and what's going on with the market for comic collecting. So if you dabble in slabs or raw books, or if none of those phrases mean anything to you and you're scratching your head, and maybe you're just someone that's curious about what that corner of the comic book fandom is like, we got you covered in this episode. Now, before we get into that, though, let me remind all of you that we are on the road to 400. We'll be recording our milestone 400th episode later this month, and it's going to be a giant Q&A episode. I'm calling the troops, all right? We're going to have the full cast back for that episode. So we're inviting all of you loyal listeners to participate. If you ever wanted your voice heard on the show, here's your chance, all right? Feel free to send in a short voicemail for us to play for that episode by going to speakpipe.com/theshortbox. And if you're self-conscious about your voice, maybe you don't got a good radio voice. That's fine. You can also write into the Shortbox as well by sending your email or question or comment to theshortboxjacks@gmail.com. Everything I just shared, all the links and details are going to be listed in the announcement section of the show notes. Everyone that submits a voicemail or sends an email or a question for that episode will automatically be entered in a comic giveaway contest. So we're looking for you to chime in with a question or a comment about the show. Maybe share your favorite memory or episode or how you came across the Shortbox. So once again, send in a short voicemail, write in an email, be a part of the 400th episode, and possibly win some cool comics. Now, let's get on with the main event. So without further ado, let's finally set the stage for today's guest of honor. He's the CEO and co-founder of the Shortboxed app, and he's here to talk about its latest updates, the future of the app, and market trends that have the comic community talking. Shortbox Nation, let's welcome for the first time ever, Gene Miguel to the show. Gene, what's up? Welcome to the show. We made it happen.
Awesome. Thanks for that awesome intro. I really appreciate it. And super excited to be on the show today. Just got to get used to hearing Shortbox and Shortbox over and over. It's getting me. It's like every time I hear it, it sort of triggers me. If you allow me, just one little aside. There have been a couple times, at conventions where we're set up and random folks would come up to us and be like, "Oh, hey, I love your podcast." I'm like, "Well, no, but yes, they do have an awesome podcast, and I'm glad you're listening to it. I'll make sure I let them know." So yeah, it doesn't confuse just you and me. It's everyone. Yeah, but I love it.
That's great. I can't say too many people have come up to me and been like, "Yo, I love the app." Well, actually, I take it back. At Heroes Con, I did have someone like, "Yo, I love the app," because I think I was wearing one of our shirts. And, I just played with it. I was like, yo, thank you so much. We value, trying to come out there representing for the Shortbox. All right.
Well, I appreciate that.
I love the background. And I've seen that background in some other interviews you've done. And I finally learned today that it's in your main meeting room, right? I saw a video, Chi Comic Girl. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But they posted a video on YouTube, a tour of Shortboxed HQ. And I got to say, man, you guys have a lovely office. So your background
thank you.
Is awesome.
Yeah, no, this is one of our conference rooms. And again, obviously, we have fun here at Shortbox. We're obviously all comic book nerds. And so we can do whatever you want. And I was like, you know what? I want to put just giant comic book panels in our conference room. What's funny is that this is actually wallpaper meant for a child's bedroom. So it's like a kid's bedroom wallpaper, and I thought this would be a perfect sort of like Zoom background. And I do not recommend. This was my first time having to put up wallpaper. And next time, hire a professional, because it's really hard. It's a lot of work.
Save yourself some time, energy, and frustration. But on the topic of like it being like a kid's background wallpaper, some of the best comic book memorabilia or items of like the best artwork are usually like the kid stuff. I remember when I finished boot camp and I started my tech school. This was almost 10 years ago or something like that. And we all had to buy like bedspreads for our rooms because they were super bare and the bedspreads they give you are terrible. I can
tell where this is going.
I went to the Walmart and bought this badass like a Spider-Man bedspread from the kids section. It had Ramita artwork. Like, I loved it. And they always give like the kid stuff the best retro artwork. Like these kids don't appreciate Ramita or John Buscema. Like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah. Well, that's what's great about doing what we do and having this passion that we have is that we get to enjoy everything made for kids and adults. So it's just it's all good.
Well said. And I recommend anyone that's got this is a super short video you can find on YouTube. It's called A Tour of Shortboxed HQ. I'm telling you, give it a watch and see how many different things you can identify. And then I challenge you not to go to Amazon and start filling up your cart with some of the cool stuff you see in the tour. Gene, you're in San Francisco, right? That's where you guys are based out of?
Yep, based out of San Francisco.
It's safe to say that's where you call home? Were you born there too?
Yeah, Bay Area native, but I've been in San Francisco for 20 plus years now. Spent most of my time here, and we wanted to base the company out of San Francisco. For those of you who don't know, my co-founder and I, we both, our backgrounds are in tech. And so we've worked our entire careers in tech and obviously in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. And so starting Shortboxed, we wanted to make sure that we founded the company here just to have access to talent and capital and sort of like all that good stuff within the tech community.
I think that's what that air of like cool is to, that extra added air of cool is to Shortboxed. You guys are at the heart of it, like a tech company. Well, maybe not at the heart of it. You guys at the heart of it are like comic fans. I guess knowing that there is a, tech company like yours, like doing these awesome things for comics, and it's like professionals, right? Like you guys have that experience, and everything that Crow shared in his episode is like a legit operation. And I think there's like that respect and trustworthiness to the brand.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And both things can be true in terms of the core and the DNA of the company. Both BJ, my co-founder, and I were both lifelong hardcore comic book nerds, and at the same time, we're both technologists and software people. And so we are a technology company at its heart. Many times, we actually don't consider ourselves a comic book company. We're a platform, we're a software company that are building for comics, for the comic book industry. So we're very much a technology company utilizing technology and innovation to really disrupt, this entire industry that hasn't really evolved in decades now. That's sort of the whole reason why we started the company and why we started.
So Crow, when he was on the show, he had mentioned how, like, from I think a design perspective, GOAT was a big one. From your perspective, what are some other tech, tech companies, apps, or things like that inspire you, that you look at like, wow, they're doing great things. I want to bring some of that energy to comic book. Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortboxed store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxedstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxedstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to. It's a great question, by the way. So thanks for asking that. Obviously, GOAT was a huge inspiration to us, but really less so specific apps that we drew inspiration from, and more so, I think it's better to understand, like, why did we decide to build Shortbox in the first place? Right? Like that's the actual like motivation in terms of like why we designed it the way that we did, because the spark that set BJ and myself down the path of building Shortbox came from a place of both frustration as well as passion for comics in this industry. Passion because we're both lifelong comic book collectors. It's something that's been part of our lives for as long as we could remember. It's part of our identity, which I'm sure is the case for a lot of your community as well. It's more than a hobby. It's a true passion of ours. And then frustration because nothing has really changed or evolved in decades. It was frustrating to us as collectors and as technologists. So we spent years complaining about just how hard and difficult it is and how complicated it is to do something as simple as buy and sell a comic book safely and easily. It's insane because it's a massive secondary market. We're talking billions of dollars changing hands every single year on what's essentially dinosaur technology. And we really realized nothing would ever change unless we did it ourselves. So that's pretty much what we did. And so that put us down the path of deciding we wanted to build Shortbox. And at that point is when we started looking at other inspiration. And GOAT was a massive inspiration to us because, GOAT and other similar apps like StockX, just modern marketplace platforms. And I could rattle off a bunch of other names, but really what we saw was that these modern marketplaces and these modern platforms and ecosystems have already existed for other, not just collectibles markets, but just sort of other markets in general that have been modernized over the past few years. And comic book collecting has been around for decades. And for some reason, this experience and this product and this ecosystem did not exist for comic books. And it was just really, really frustrating to us. So that was really the inspiration. It was just, one, starting with frustration, but also coming from a place of, passion for the hobby. And then seeing that these exist in other verticals and in other markets. And that's what really put us on this path of building Shortboxed. So, GOAT was a huge inspiration to us because, they looked at the sneaker market. For those who aren't familiar, GOAT's a marketplace for sneakers and fashion. And I actually reached out to Eddie Liu. This is public information, by the way. I reached out to Eddie Liu. He's the founder and CEO of GOAT. Just wanted to learn as much as I could from him in terms of why he started the company, what inspired him. Very much the same question you just asked me, and learned that he came from the same exact place where he couldn't understand why it was so hard to safely and easily buy and sell sneakers. And we ended up having a good relationship with each other and bonding and becoming good friends. And he's actually an investor in Shortboxed now, just as a result of that. So again, to say that was GOAT was an inspiration is underselling it a bit.
Yeah. Wow, dude, that's awesome to hear. You're saying a few words that definitely resonate with like how I view and respect you guys. I can tell that it's being run by like legit comic fans that are both readers, but also like know what they're doing and what they want to see in the marketplace, right? Like, and we'll talk a little more about the current updates that have like just been game changers. But I can tell if every release, all the major releases, it comes from a place of like, man, now these guys have been in the trenches. They know what it's like trying to sell a book, buy a book, and I love that you guys aren't complacent with the way things have been. Years ago, I would not have imagined like any of that changing. Like it almost felt foundational, almost felt like it was part of the experience. Like, yeah, we don't have it, we lack this, technology hasn't caught up. It doesn't really apply to comics. I wouldn't have believed that any of this stuff would have changed or gotten better, but you guys are out here doing the comic lord's work. So kudos to you guys.
Oh, I really, really appreciate that. What's also so important is that every employee at Shortboxed is a comic book collector. Every single person, all our engineers, everyone in marketing, everyone in operations and support, everyone in business development, everyone across the board is a comic book collector. And it's important because from a support and operations perspective, we have to be able to talk to our customers who are also obviously comic book collectors and sellers. So having a deep, intimate understanding of their pains and what they're going through, that also comes through in terms of product and engineering. We have to understand what needs to be built because, we're actually our own customer and we're building this for ourselves. And that's something that BJ and I, made sure of right when we started was that we knew we had a shot at doing this because we're building for ourselves. We're building something that we thought needed to exist because we were our own ideal customer. And we knew that there were a lot of collectors out there. And to your point, nothing would have changed. Everything would have been the same. The status quo would have been the same. And
well said.
It needed to be shaken up a little bit.
And since we're on the topic of the origin stories and all that, I was stalking your Twitter page earlier this week, and I noticed you posted...
No, I haven't tweeted in a while.
Yeah, that was one thing I know.
Thanks for the reminder to get back to tweeting.
Yeah, all good. I think you mentioned something about taking like a break from social media, which I'm kind of overdue for. But I did see that you tweeted a photo, like a how it started versus how it's going picture on your Twitter. I think like 2 years ago. The photo of how it started was from 2014, and I think it was you and your co-founder set up at a convention. You guys were standing by just the biggest cheese-eating grin, by the way. You guys were standing by like some dollar comic boxes, obviously like, early days of Shortboxed. There was like some flyers for Shortboxed that had the logo. I guess when you think back to those early days, one, I didn't know that you guys were like doing the convention hustle, bringing in boxes, selling like that. Can you share a few words when you think back to like that photo or those early days of like, being on the convention floor and in the trenches?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing here is that, while we launched Shortboxed, the app, 3.5 years ago, almost exactly 3.5 years ago, we had been working on Shortboxed, the brand, for nearly a decade now. I think Chrome mentioned, we started as a blog just to connect with other collectors. This was before there was, a thriving Instagram and YouTube and Reddit communities, all over the place. And so we just needed a way to connect with collectors. And then we actually became dealers ourselves. We hit the convention circuit. We took PTO from our jobs to travel around the country to set up at conventions. And through that experience, establish relationships with collectors, all over the country, all over the world, establish relationships with the top dealers in the industry. And it was really through that experience of being dealers ourselves and no longer just sort of like collectors, buying stuff on eBay and whatnot, but just being dealers ourselves. And that's what actually sort of peeled back the curtain for us, just to see how poorly and inefficiently this entire industry is run. And when we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars from the biggest auction houses on the planet or in the market running on 20-year-old web technology and Excel spreadsheets. It's just very, very, very antiquated. And so we had to spend years, like you said, in the trenches being dealers ourselves, because that's actually what showed us how poorly this entire industry is run. And sort of, again, that sort of kicked the rock down the road across many years of just, again, constant complaining about how bad everything is. And again, now you could go back to what I spoke about a couple of minutes ago, that really sort of, spurred the spark, that sort of, set us off there. And, with our backgrounds in tech, which I mentioned before, Bij and I, we essentially just sort of combined our superpowers, if you will, and we started working on Shortboxed, the app, while we had our full-time jobs. We did have, admittedly, very like cushy jobs like in tech, but obviously just having this passion for comics and being dealers for many years, we just started hacking on it, nights and weekends, outside of our day jobs. Again, we took more PTO and vacations, just to hack and just to build and iterate on the app before we actually launched. So we rent an Airbnb for a week together and just hunker down for a week just to build and just to hack. And then keep attending conventions just to talk to collectors and dealers face to face, learn from them, ask them, what are their pain points? What do they need help with? What's not working? And then, just before we were ready to launch, we took that massive leap of faith and, again, left our admittedly incredibly cushy jobs in tech, to work on Shortboxed full time. But, we had so much conviction in what we were building, and that it was something that the industry and collectors actually needed. We truly felt like we could build something to help usher this industry forward, and just not let it be stuck, in the Stone Age. So while on the outside it may look like, we launched it 3 years ago and that was that, this has been,
years of hard work,
years of learning and experiencing, all that the community and the industry has to offer, for better or for worse.
Damn, hella inspiring, man. As someone that works, admittedly a pretty cushy 9-to-5 job, I know what it's like to also work, the 9-to-5 and then the 5 to, whatever, midnight, right, or however late sometimes I'm up as well. So that's inspiring to hear. And that is so great to hear that. So we went from, and we're kind of doing a little bit of fast forwarding and jumping around here, but app launches 3.5 years ago. Prior to that, it was a blog. Just this May, though, you guys did your first ever live show with Shortboxed Live in Santa Clara, California. Had some friends of mine actually go out there. Big shout out to Zach Armour. It looked fantastic.
Love Zach.
Oh, dude, Zach is the best. I wasn't able to attend, but it looked fantastic. And I was curious to hear from you, like from your perspective, how was it? Like, what firsthand account? Tell me how it went.
Yeah, it was an amazing show. Like you said, this was our first time producing our own convention. We go to all the major cons, we sponsor them, we set up a booth, and we connect with the community there. But we really felt like it was time for us to produce our own show because just like I've been harping on this old school industry and how things need to change, and really wanted to usher the industry forward. We also feel that, and I still feel this way, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. That in-person comic book conventions also still need to evolve. They also still need to change. There's this kind of clear dividing line between con goers, where you have just the general sort of like convention going community, which is amazing, and everyone can enjoy something from a con these days, which is great, and I love that. And then you have this other contingent of just sort of like the really hardcore comic book people who don't care about celebrities and panels and all these other things that they simply just don't care about. They just want to focus on comics, and so they want like sort of like the pure comic book show. But I also felt that the sort of quote unquote old school comic show, where it's just a bunch of dealers in a Holiday Inn ballroom or like in a community center.
I've been
Which
to
again,
thousands of those. Yeah,
it has its charms, right? And there's the novelty of it, and a lot of people love that, and I love that just because I am a pure comic collector. But that also still has to evolve. That show experience has to evolve, and not just on the attendee side, but on the dealer side as well, because you have dealers that have been involved in this industry for decades now, and now with platforms like Shortboxed or even eBay and all these other marketplace platforms, it's not hard for collectors to find comics that they're looking for. Like you don't have to go through mail order catalogs anymore. Like those days are gone. A lot of comic book collectors and fans don't necessarily have to go to a comic book convention to buy comics, right? And you have a lot of people always complaining, oh, so and so, people like price too high at shows, and they just don't like haggling and doing that. Well, at the same time, for dealers, they also need to evolve their convention experience as well. And so this was sort of just like how this idea was brewing, where we wanted to sort of flip the idea of the comic book convention on its head, and the way that we made it a little different was it seems minor, but added all together, sort of made for a really cool experience where we invited all the dealers that wanted to come to the show, and it was all expenses paid for all the dealers. It was by invite only. These are the top dealers in the country who were also Shortbox sellers. We covered all their travel and airfare, no booth fees, none of that, because we wanted to curate just an amazing lineup of the best dealers in the industry. And even just the way that we set up the convention floor is just one big room with all the dealers around the edges. We invited amazing comic artists. We put them right in the middle, so the focus is on the creators and the art. And we also set up a stage right in the middle of the room as well, so that you don't have to leave and go listen to panels. But the people that we brought on to be panelists were creators, other YouTubers, and other hosts as well that are hosting content. And so it just created this sort of just amazing energy all within one room. And so there's a lot of activity going on. But the way that it was set up was it just really fostered face-to-face interactions and community building, because there has to be more to convention than just pure commerce, than just pure showing up, here's money, take my comic, that's it. Oh, and just taking away the pure sort of transactionality of it, and trying to really foster community. So, with that said, I think there still needs to be just some evolution in the traditional comic book convention. But with that said, it was an awesome show. I love Zach. I know he's been on your show a couple times. Like he's amazing.
Zach was kind enough to grab me a few things from the event. One of them being that rad Maria Wolf T-shirt that you guys made.
Insane.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I'm still waiting to hear back from her to get on the show. I think she's moving, but that's definitely on my list of guests.
Well, I'll see her at San Diego Comic-Con this week, so I'll make sure. I'm good friends with her, and we spend a lot of time with each other at conventions, and so I'll make sure to give her the nudge to go on your show.
I had a chance to meet and talk to her at Heroes Con, and she was even better than everyone.
She's a talker. She would be an amazing guest to have on your show.
Yeah, so, I'm looking forward to it. All right, so Gene, let's actually get into talking about some of the new features that you guys have rolled out that have been, like I said, game changers to the community and to your users. At the time of this recording, version 3.2.2 is out, which gives all registered users the ability to sell raw books, along with some miscellaneous improvements. And then a month ago, you and the entire team dropped that game-changing 3.0 update that introduced the portfolio feature, an updated offering system, and of course, I think that it's safe to say the crown jewel of that rollout, the price guide database, which is completely free. I'll let you explain the technicalities, but I do remember it was something that Crow hinted at and was extremely excited about rolling out. He didn't give too much details, but I could tell that it was going to be something big, and sure enough, it was. Judging from the reactions online and the very hard work of the Shortboxed street team that has been getting the word out, I feel like a month ago, that's all I was seeing on my Instagram feed, whether it was Zach or Diesel Dan or Marcus Nerdy, like all of them were praising and making videos and contents about like the price guide and the new updates. But from a layman's perspective, what are these features and why are they such a big deal? Like, what is the importance of having like a price guide database and all that?
Right. Well, before that, shout out to our street team. So thank you for mentioning they're awesome. And the good thing about our street team is, we don't tell them what kind of content to create. We don't tell them what to do. They're collectors themselves, and we just let them be themselves. And it's just and I think it's just a great way for us to connect, with communities that we otherwise may not necessarily have been able to reach out to. And they're amazing people, Zach being one of them as well. So, shout out to them. But for all the features that we launched, there was a lot that we rolled out. We spent months, working on these before we put them out. And so, For one of them being sort of the portfolio. This is essentially a collection management tool. It's a way for people to add books to their collection. They can check the value of it over time as they add books and do all that kind of stuff. And if they're not currently sellers on the platform, if and when they're ready to sell the book, they just tap on the book in their portfolio and say list for sale, and it spits them through, kind of like a flow where they can get the book listed for sale. And so it's just a really cool way for people to, track and manage their collection there. Of course, raw comics is huge. This is something that we just rolled out this week to all of our sellers, that people can just start listing raw comics right now, because to now it's only been graded books, so it's big.
Dude, that gets me so excited. When I saw the raw books, first of all, I don't feel like I ever use the phrase raw books, but now it's like part of my fucking dictionary.
Yeah.
But that got me super excited because I've admitted on the show, I don't have a lot of slabs. Like I am at the heart of it just like a reader, and I give away more comics than I keep. But the raw book feature was, I was like, oh, damn, this is a game changer for me personally, as well as the next feature we'll talk about, the price guide. But to go back to the portfolio, I'll go ahead and admit, I think I only had a cursory knowledge of like what the portfolio meant. Mm-hmm. So hearing you say that like it kind of reminds me of, I'm a huge vinyl collector, for anyone that doesn't know. That is where too much of my money goes to. And so I'm always on Discogs.
Yep, and I love Discogs. Fantastic app. Great team.
You got good taste, Gene. So I love the fact that I can, like on Discogs, scan all my records and have an idea of like, how much can I, if push comes to shove and one day your boy needs to, pay a bill, how much is my, record collection worth? Mm-hmm. Even though I don't ever envision myself selling my collection, it's nice to know. I think it's just smart to know, like, what you're working with. So hearing you say that you guys have a similar feature of the portfolio, and not only that, but you can also, it makes it easier to sell. Yeah. That is really dope.
Yeah, speaking of inspiration, I should have mentioned Discogs. They also were a big inspiration to us as well. So yeah.
So my whole collecting story is, I've been collecting since high school, and I would say, I'm gonna say like 10, maybe 15 years ago, I had moved out of the house into my own place, out of my parents, and all of my books and short boxes and long boxes were in my parents' garage, which is not a great place to. It's like store your comics.
Yeah, I hope they were off the ground.
Some of them were. But I remember like my mom was like, hey, look, you got to do something with these books. You've got like 13 long boxes, 20 short boxes, do something. And I remember I found like a bulk buyer. He ran, he does like shows around town, comic show, or he did comic shows. And he came through, bought everything I had. And ever since then, I've been very self-conscious about like just not having a lot of, short boxes and things.
Yeah.
But at the time, I had no idea what my collection was worth. So in hindsight, some days I look back at it like, you fool. You should have just bought, paid the storage unit and figured that out a little better. So hearing you say that, had I maybe held off until now, I would have had a good idea of what I had and what it's worth. So
yeah, don't beat yourself up over it. That happens to all of us.
I cry every night about it.
We all have our books that we regret selling. I'm sure every single person has their stories. So you're not alone.
You know what it is that I'm seeing books like first appearances of like modern characters that I was around for, that I was in the shop. I was working at a comic shop when Miles Morales like first appeared, and Kamala Khan's, and all of those books from like that mid 2000 knots, like the 2010s on up. I had like so many of those, but I wasn't, I had other priorities. So I'm seeing like those books like increase in price, and it's like, damn, man, I wish I had a better resource, back in the day to like get a grasp of what what my collection was looking like. So
right.
I say all that to say the portfolio feature is awesome, but tell us about this price guide database you guys built.
Yeah, so price guide's pretty important to us. At the highest level, it's a pricing tool. It's a way that you could type in a book, a title and an issue number, and just look up historical or recent sales for that book. You can see like how recent it's been selling, how many have sold, how much it's sold for. And it's a tool for buyers and sellers just to research comic book prices and values, right? So all we do is we pull millions. We have over 1 million recent sales that we can show from a mix of Shortboxed sales, eBay sales, Heritage, and virtually every other platform as well. So we actually show you all the recent sales on there. But what makes this sort of more important to us is that, again, I mentioned that BJ, my co-founder, and I, we're both hackers, we're technologists. We are, huge proponents of open source software, and we've been very involved in the open source community our entire careers. And, we do believe in an open and free internet. And so, there's a reason why I'm saying all this right now, because, with that context, access to publicly available information should not be gated behind a paywall, right? And when I say information, in this case, I mean comic book sales data, right? There's a lot of, there's tools and platforms out there where, you can research and look up prices, and, you can pay your, X amount of dollars per month. But really, we want to make sure that all collectors, sellers, dealers, everyone has access to pricing data without having to pay for it, right? None of this information is private, or proprietary. It's all out there for free. A lot of us know how to search eBay by sold listings, right? Like your community, is full of seasoned collectors, and
I am a black belt in
right.
eBay sold and completed
Exactly.
listings. So don't even try me on that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like in a lot of cases, they're experts at doing this. But at the same time, I would say you being a black belt in searching eBay for sold listings is not the norm, right? I would call you an expert at doing that, and more casual collectors don't even know how to do that. They don't even know how to research price. So they're immediately at a disadvantage, right? This creates a parity in the market between certain groups of buyers and sellers. And our job, is really just to democratize access to publicly available information, to really just create an even playing field for everyone. Again, collectors, dealers, buyers, sellers, everyone. Because again, this information is free and it's public, and we just wanted to make sure that we built a tool that everyone can use without getting it behind a paywall, because again, I think it's good for the industry and just for the market as a whole if everyone is on a level playing field. And again, it's access to information. And so we decided just to build this tool and roll it out for free. We did get a lot of pushback from some folks like, oh, you should be charging $5 a month for this or $10 a month for this. And for us, no, it's information that's available to everyone, and it's a completely free tool that people can use just to research comic book prices. And so it's a feature that we're personally very kind of like proud of.
Gene, if you were running for presidency and this was like your platform, like open source access to, a free access to information, I'd vote for you in an instant. That was
thank you. At least I got one vote.
I'll go ahead and give another compliment in terms of the database, because I was playing around with it today, just before we hopped on. I was like, let me see like what it actually looks like and how, what that experience is. Smooth, dude. Smooth. Like I mentioned, jokingly being a black belt in eBay sold listings. The problem with that is that it's not very digestible. Like you're right. Like you really kind of got to know how, what features, what filters to set, and right. It leaves much to be desired in the sense of presentation.
Right. It's either that experience or you pay a service to tell you what a book is worth.
And I've never paid a service to tell me like how much a book is worth, because at that point I'm like, well, then I clearly can't afford that, or I should not be paying for that. Like I said, I was playing around with it. I was looking up the first appearance of Hellboy and I think Iron Man 118, which is the first appearance of Rhodey.
Okay, hold on. Can I interrupt you real quick, if you don't mind me asking? So, first appearance of Hellboy, controversial topic.
Oh my god.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. What was the book that you were searching for that you think is the first appearance of Hellboy?
Okay. I just typed in Next Men 21. Mm-hmm. Now, oh my god, you're going to send me down this Hellboy rabbit hole.
You're going to get a bunch of angry messages now. Sorry.
And this is actually something Crow we talked on when Crow was on. But I know Hellboy's considered Next Men 21 is considered the first full appearance of Hellboy that we know of, right? Like interior artwork, all that, the red and all that. I know there's a bunch of other first appearances prior of him looking.
There's like
much
the
different.
San Diego Comic-Con
there's
number
that
2.
one. Crow put me on to the that French comic where it's like an early prototype of him. So yeah, I'm familiar with like the different the different first appearances that people recognize. But I just put in X-Men 21 just for because it's just easy to find. And then obviously that Iron Man issue, and yeah, man, it was exactly as you said. It everything came up. I love the fact that you guys say where all this sales data is coming from, whether it be eBay, third party apps, when it was sold, so you got an idea of like relevancy, and it's kind of fun to just kind of see like what some of these like things go for now, and and where they sold, and so just from a data kind of nerdiness or a data hoarder aspect. Like that's a cool feature. Even if I don't plan on buying these books or seeking them out, it's just I just love the fact that it's seamless, it's easy, the presentation is clean, you know, like, and who doesn't? Even if you don't dabble in selling books or slabs and all that stuff, like, I don't know. The commerce side of comics is an interesting and fun aspect to it, man. You know, like it adds a certain character to it. And who doesn't like seeing, like, wow, you know, the first appearance of Doctor Doom is going for, you know, thousands of dollars. You know, it's just something to that. It's just fun.
It's crazy, right? Especially when you chat with folks who aren't involved, you know, in this industry, in this market, you know,
blow their mind.
They're just eyeballs just pop out of their sockets when they see how expensive these things are.
Yeah. Now, Gene, I got to ask you from a newbie user, right? Like I said, I'm just kind of dipping my toe back into comic book commerce and marketplace and all that. I'm curious though, from just like kind of a selfish standpoint, I have a crap ton of graphic novels and trades. When I sold all my single issues, I kind of transitioned to like trades and nice hardcovers and omnibus and things like that. Is there any plans, like future plans for supporting like the sales of like those type of books, or maybe even like toys, like comic related toys at some point? Or are you guys kind of strictly keeping it?
Yeah, well, just open up a can of worms here. The short answer, here is yes. You know, like long term, you know, we would like to expand the platform, you know, into other markets, into other collectibles markets, right? You know, there's, you know, not necessarily, let's say, like an eBay, which is a marketplace for every single thing under the sun, you know, but there's still, you know, focus on collectibles. But that's much further down. Right now, we are 100% focused on comic books because it's still such a massive market, and there's still so much work to be done here. I think there's still a lot of optimizing to be done on the app, so a lot more features to be built, and still just a lot more ground to make up, and still a lot more to accomplish. And this is what we know. This is what we understand. This is our audience and our community. And there's still so much, like years of work to be done, to really feel like we truly have, you know, kind of ushered this industry, you know, into the next generation, which is really our goal. You know, we want to make it easy and safe for everyone, not just us now, but generations beyond us. You know, how do we make comics and comic book collecting more mainstream? How do we make it more accessible? You know, what are the things and the features and programs we need to run to do that? And I think now is, you know, if you don't mind me going on a slight tangent here, I think now is just, there's never been a better time to be a comic book nerd. I think just in history, I think now is just an amazing time to be that comic book nerd, because we've had this amazing tailwind over the past, you know, 12, 13 years, whenever, you know, the MCU started, however long ago that was. You know, now you've got comic book characters just infiltrating all types of popular media, you know, like movies, TV, video games, everything, and really just thrusting these amazing characters and stories into the mainstream. And I think this is good for the industry as a whole. You know, sure, there's always going to be gatekeepers who kind of, you know, like the hipster gatekeepers who want to keep these characters and stories, you know, to themselves and like not let it get too cool. And to each their own, of course. And but I don't agree with that, respectfully. You know, I've been a comic book nerd my whole life, and you know, most of my childhood and adolescent years, you know, I almost had to hide that. You know, it wasn't necessarily something that, you know, I wanted to broadcast to the world, that I was just, you know, mega comic book nerd, especially, you know, when I was in like middle school and high school, you know, like just trying to be, you know, navigating that world and, you know, trying to do things that I felt like weren't going to make me too uncool, you know, but going through those sort of very formative years, you know, wasn't necessarily something you wanted to, you know, broadcast out. So now today, when I go to the movies and I see an entire theater full of people cheering on these heroes and these characters that I grew up with and have such a strong personal connection to, is such an amazing feeling. You know, it's like the comic book nerds won, and there's room for everyone on this hype train. You know, and we really want to usher this truly into the mainstream. And how do we make it more accessible? How do we make it easier? And again, it's about building, you know, platforms and tools and opportunities, and just making access so much easier for everyone. And so that's, you know, kind of part of our mission, if you will.
I co-sign everything you just said. I want to add that I can walk by a locker to this day and I get PTSD. So I know I know what it was like having to hide like your comic fandom. You mentioned the movies, you know, obviously being a great pipeline to, you know, people finding about comics and entering this culture and things like that. Do you, from just a nerdy like data and marketing trends perspective, like do you guys see a bump in any significant, whether bump in sales or I don't know. Do you guys notice anything on your side when like these movies come out? Like obviously, I'm thinking it's obvious that like, you know, if let's think of what's a movie like Blue Beetle comes out next month. Like, do you see like those bumps in like first appearance of Blue Beetle comics or whatever it may be when those trailers and those movie time come?
So I think this is pretty, you know, most folks can probably guess the answer is yes, we do. Okay. Right? I think it's a very clear sort of like phenomenon that, you know, when there's an announcement, suddenly all the copies disappear off Shortboxed and eBay and all the other platforms. Or there's a new trailer and then you see a bump in sales and then the next trailer comes out and then the movie comes out and then maybe there's a dip depending on how good the movie is. Maybe it continues to dip or it gets even more expensive. So, you know, what we see on our end, at least on Shortboxed, you know, what we see is a reflection of the market as a whole. Right? It's like what we see in the wider market, you know, is reflected in what happens on our platform as well. What's funny is that, man, collectors are on top of things. They are quick. Like they're like James Bond level, like quick with just getting access to information. I don't know how they do it because, like, you know, we have sort of an internal dashboard. We know when orders are coming in. It's just, again, you know, it's sort of like firing off like all day just to see. But, you know, we may log on in the morning or hop into the office in the morning and we suddenly just see a string of sales of a very specific book. And it's like, okay, something happened. Something went out there. Hop on Google the book, see what, and like the news isn't even out yet. And then like midday, like it'll drop. So there's like people are getting access to information somehow because we can tell because we'll see books just flying off without any sort of announcement, and then we'll see the announcement get leaked or through a press release or through blogs, you know, hours later. So it's kind of crazy to sort of see that happen in real time. That's been a sort of an interesting phenomenon that we've seen.
I guess like based on the data that you guys see and you know what you guys collect on the back end, like maybe not even so much so on the back end, but just in general, what are some common, I guess, mistakes that sellers or maybe even buyers at that are making when it comes to selling and buying comics? And do you have any like tips and tricks to give, you know, sellers and buyers when it comes to like, you know, being efficient or you know, maximizing profit or getting a fair deal? Like, what are some of the things that you notice or would advise to?
Yeah, I mean, I think on paper, right, a buying and selling transaction should be fairly straightforward and simple. It's like, here, I'm a seller. I have this book. Here's my price. Then you have a buyer. Cool. I have money. Here's my money. And then you make the transaction. In the real world, it's never that simple, right? So if I was going to boil it down, I think it ultimately comes, and I discussed it earlier, and you could probably guess where this is going, is it's when there's a lack of information or one side or both sides, you know, don't have the full picture. Right? Or like both sides of realities can be completely different. So for example, maybe you have someone who's never really sold a comic before. So, you know, they pull this comic out and they say, hey, I heard this book is expensive. I want to ask, you know, I don't want to sell this for less than $1,000. And then you have someone who's interested in buying that. And, you know, the last 10 sales have been for $100. Clearly there was a gap between those two. Both of their realities are very different, where the buyer might say, no, man, this book is worth $100 because look at the last 10 sales. They've all been for $100. So why would I pay $1,000 for this book? But the seller, like his reality might say, well, no, this book is super important to me. Like this is the copy that I bought off the newsstand when I was a kid. This is so valuable to me. And so now there's just this disconnect between how both parties sort of like value that book. And I think for both sides, you know, if I was going to give a tip, it's just, you know, try and understand where the other side is coming from. Right, and just try and understand it. And if the disconnect is that wide, then it's okay to just walk away from the deal. Like it's okay. You don't have to buy it. And likewise, if you're a seller, you don't have to sell it. You know, everyone is, you know, a lot of people will complain how a lot of sellers will price books way too high. Well, you know, sellers can price a book at, you know, whatever they want. You know, these are collectibles. You know, the market decides what a book is worth. Likewise, you know, sellers may be complaining that buyers are always lowballing them and they want to, you know, undercut them. Well, at the same time, you know, it's as a buyer, it's my money, and I could pay whatever I'm comfortable paying for it. So, you know, I think a lot of the disconnect just happens when both sides are in sort of completely different fields, and they're just not again on the same page. And I think it's okay to walk away from that. It's okay to say, hey, you know, I think we're too far apart, or this isn't for me. You know, and the reason why I was thinking of this example now is because, you know, I was talking about, you know, conventions, and something that you see at cons all the time, where it's just. It devolves into two people arguing with each other over the price of a book and how much they're willing to pay, and they're just so far apart. It's okay to just walk away from a deal. It's be patient, right? You also don't, if you're a collector and a buyer, just be patient. Like, a book will come around again, unless you're talking of just, the most rare golden age, obscure golden age books that you see once here. But, for most of the superhero stuff, especially from the Silver Age onwards, there's other copies. Just be patient. It's really easy to get sucked into FOMO, especially when there's, trailer drops and announcements and news, and just being hit with a deluge of just like content and people telling you what to buy. So I would say make sure you just have, all the information you need to make your buying or selling decision. It's okay to walk from a deal. Just be patient. And then, don't succumb to FOMO. Just collect what you love. At the end of the day, that's the one thing. I know it's very cliche, but if you collect what you love, then you'll pretty much never lose. You'll be happy. There's no magic bullet to it, right? And part of the challenge of that is that there is so much information out there. Everyone does have information, so it's hard to scam people. People will try, and unfortunately, some people will get scammed. But the more information that's out there, the more level the playing field is, the better and happier I think everyone will be, and the more efficient the market as a whole will be in terms of just facilitating transactions. At the end of the day, just collect what you love and try not to get sucked into the FOMO of things.
Masterful answer. You've given, all right, you've said a few things in that answer that I want to pick apart. For starters, I guess I've never given serious consideration to the emotional connection that someone's got to a book when it comes to selling. I never thought about it from that perspective of like, what that book could mean to someone personally, and why that might skew their perception of of its value, of what it should be worth. That is, I feel like that is a psychology paper waiting to happen.
Yeah, it happens more often than you think. You have, especially when it's folks that are sort of like selling their personal collection books, right? It's just,
this is from my grandpa, and
they're on two different realities. It's just and you may not even be able to come close. And so just at least being aware of these types of things. A more simplified version of this would be, someone may have overpaid for a book, and now they're trying to recoup their money, and the market is tanked. And a buyer may be like, well, that's your fault for overpaying for the book. Doesn't mean I have to pay that much.
They're trying to pass the book of, I got you. Wow. Okay. And then also it highlights Shortboxed unique role, right? Like, not only are you guys a platform for these, transactions to happen, but also puts you guys in a peculiar spot, like kind of in the middle. And I guess if you guys were just like strictly for, strictly thinking like with your capitalist brains, and it was only for like business only, you guys could just leave it be. But I do like that you guys are taking proactive steps to be unifiers, to like lessen the gap between both parties, and giving, both parties like I guess really like the information to be aware. Because if you're saying like the biggest problem is like the lack of information or awareness or being on the same page, then you guys are trying to bring a solution to that. And that's highly commendable, but not nearly as commendable as hearing a CEO of a company say, walk away from the buy, walk away from the deal. I think that is also commendable, that, you put, the buying and the selling experience first and foremost before profit. Because at the end of the day, like a sale that doesn't go through in Shortbox is, it's money out of your pocket, but it sounds like you're looking at the bigger picture and the health of the community. And that's awesome to hear.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's our job from a product perspective, from a user experience and a design and future perspective, just to remove all those barriers so that buyers and sellers can just go straight to the transaction itself without having all of these barriers in the way, right? Let's give both sides equal access to information so they're both on the equal playing field. Let's just make the whole process easy so that it's just as simple as buying a book that you want at the price you want, or selling a book at the price that you're willing to sell it. It's really just our job from sort of like a software design perspective to make it as easy and seamless as possible.
Well said. So you've given us examples of maybe some of those hurdles between the buying and selling experience, but I want to zoom out a little bit and maybe look at, the place that Shortbox has in a larger scale in the comic book industry. Because a consistent, I think, topic of debate that you'll hear if you're, in this culture and in this world, is the status and health of the comic industry. It feels like every couple of months, the topic is brought up in online circles, or in comic shops, or among fans, that the status of the industry. Is it thriving? Is it dying? Is manga pushing it out of relevance? Or movies helping at all? Are they, bringing in new readers, or do we have new fresh blood, et cetera, et cetera? Pick any one of those, and it feels like any day of the week or any, week that's brought up and debated online. But I'm curious from your perspective and Shortboxed in general, like what's the biggest challenge facing Shortboxed? Is it coming internally from the industry itself, or is it something from the outside, or more from like a technical or a tech company perspective? Like what are the challenges that you guys are challenges, and I guess opportunities for Shortboxed to like continue growing and advancing?
No, that's a great question. And it touches on some of the things I've already discussed. Again, our mission as a company is to make comic books more mainstream, more accessible, right? When I say comic books, I mean, the collecting secondary market. Like, how do we make it a bigger market? Because I think the industry as a whole, when you look at the incumbents in the space, the incumbent auction platforms and other sales platforms and other marketplaces, they have had this massive and incredible tailwind over the past decade of these characters being thrust into the mainstream now. There's just been this amazing tailwind to really, solidify comic books as a very mainstream hobby. And I think the ball was just dropped. I'm not going to call anyone out specifically, but it's just really just sort of like the industry as a whole, because they haven't evolved in many, many years. And there's this huge opportunity to really make comic books really popular. Like, why aren't comic books, and I could say this is, why aren't they up there and as popular as sneakers? You could even make the case of like put it up there with vinyl as well. I would argue that vinyl collectors probably maybe even more mainstream than comic books, or trading cards or sports cards. And I think it's just because the industry as a whole just kind of flubbed this one, over the past few years. And so our challenge is to be that platform to really usher this industry forward and make it more accessible to more of a mainstream audience. Because, whether you like it or not, like comic books in at least the secondary market, it's a massive, massive market, and comic books are a big business, and the books themselves are expensive and valuable, and we want more people to be into comics. We want more people into collecting comic books, because a growing number of collectors don't even consider themselves collectors but investors. That word is probably going to trigger a few folks, but that's sort of like the reality of it. They don't treat comic books as just sort of like comic books or just like a collectible item. They treat them as alternative investment assets and stores of value. Well, guess what happens if no one cares about comics? They become worthless. Like the market decides what a book is worth. So comic books are not just part of mainstream popular culture, but they're also just pure Americana. They're part of our history and culture. Not a fad, and they haven't been a fad. It's been 80 years. So with Disney and Warner Brothers owning Marvel and DC IP, I think it's safe to say that these characters and stories kind of will be entertaining the world for generations to come. And it's really our job to make sure that we build a platform and we make it accessible so people can, continue to collect comics. Because what we're seeing is there is a growing segment of collectors that are entering the space, not because they remember buying comic books off the rack from the pharmacy or the grocery store, which is how I bought comics when I was a kid, but they're discovering these characters through video games, through TV, through film, and they want to go back and they want to own the source material, or they get exposed to comics and they want to go back and read old stories and new stories. But we just have to make sure that we make that possible, and that starts with building platforms like Shortboxed and other platforms as well, just to really sort of just grow this industry. So it's a very long-winded way of answering your question of what's our challenge. Our challenge is that how do we usher this industry forward? How do we make it more accessible to everyone? Not just in the U.S., but also just, worldwide. They're collectors all over the world, not just the U.S. And so that's really sort of like the big picture of the challenge that we're tackling.
Well said. That's a great perspective to have. Gene, my last question here, and I've got to adjust this one just a little bit because you've been given gems and great advice the whole show. But if you had the opportunity to give a younger version of yourself a piece of advice that you wish you would have had starting out, that would have made life easier, for all these years of experience you've got now, and in hindsight, like what's something you would have given, you would have told a younger version of you, or maybe just in general, like what is a piece of advice that you would give to someone looking to carve out their own spot in comics that might necessarily not be a writer or artist? I do like the fact that your story involves like, your passion for comics, but also like your passion and know-how of technology and whatnot. Like what piece of advice would you give?
Yeah, that's a great question, which we can probably, expand upon for another hour of talking. And it's a very loaded question, but I would say trust your conviction, right? Trust the conviction that you have. And there's many ways to interpret this, right? If we're talking about, sort of like comics and comic book culture specifically, and the folks in this industry, they have their own ideas or the things they want to build or the things they want to accomplish and do. And it does come from a very personal place because, and I think I mentioned earlier that for a lot of us, a lot of collectors, comic books aren't just this sort of like fun hobby. For a lot it is, and that's totally fine. But for some of us, it's something very personal. It's something that we identify with. It's something that has been with us our entire lives. And so, when deciding sort of like what path you want to go down or what you want to accomplish or what you want to do within this space or other spaces as well, it has to come from a place of just really, really high conviction where you truly believe that, taking your skills or what you have and what you have to offer and being able to combine it with whatever it is that you want to accomplish. You just have to have a lot of conviction and you have to trust your conviction and just go with it. Right. And now it's turning into a little bit of kind of like an inspirational type talk, but it's true. All of us, we have conviction in what we want to do and what we can do. And we just have to trust that and kind of make that leap of faith and just go for it. Because, I mentioned when BJ and I in the early years, our conviction was so strong because we had spent years complaining to each other, almost like therapists, just complaining every con we go to, every time we set up at a show, just constantly complaining about how hard and complicated and convoluted all this is. And like we could see it and it just made so much sense. And we had complained for years, right? When we should have trusted that conviction from the onset, right? And we could have built faster, we could have built sooner, we could have built earlier and done all that. And, you just in general, you just have to trust your own conviction and let it sort of lead you and don't shy away from it.
I love hearing that. That is awesome. It reminds me of, I'm going to botch this quote, but it's like, be the solution that you want to see,
Right.
Like, I feel like I've heard that from a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs is like, if you've got a hobby or something you love, like try to identify those opportunities, those problems, and see if you can like build a solution, be that solution. So,
one thing I want to add to this also is that in terms of just trusting in your own conviction and having conviction in something in the first place is important because you may be faced with a lot of people telling you no, or telling you that it won't work, or you can't do this, or you won't accomplish that. And so being able to identify whatever conviction you have in the face of that, in the face of those headwinds trying to push back against you, is all the more reason to just like trust your gut, essentially. Because, if you allow me to expand on this a little bit, we did have a lot of people in the industry who told us this wouldn't work and to not do it because it's never worked before. And a lot of people have tried, doing this and will never beat, platform X, Y, or Z because they've been doing it for 20 years. Well, they've been doing the same thing for 20 years and they haven't really helped the industry at all. So, we might as well give it a shot.
Damn right. Mic drop right there. Well said, Gene. Gene, obviously, I feel like a part 2 is definitely needed. I know you're a busy guy. I got to let you go. But this conversation has been fantastic. Like,
this is a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I'm going to have links for your socials and links for people to check out Shortboxed themselves in the show notes. But do you have anything else that you want to share with the listeners, like upcoming projects, special announcements, previews, parting words, shameless plug away, good sir, please?
No, that's just it. I mean, obviously, I spent a lot of time just talking about Shortboxed itself, so I don't think I need to expand that anymore. But, for those of us who may have been hearing about Shortboxed for the first time on the show, and you're into buying and selling comic books, definitely you can download it. It's a free app on iOS and Android. And also, my inbox is open. I love connecting with the community. You can just email me if anyone has any questions or they want to connect personally. You can just email it, just Gene, Gene, @shortboxed.com. I love getting notes from people, and I'm happy to chat.
Damn. Shortboxed Nation. Look, Gene for president. I think we can all echo that sentiment right there. Gene, thank you so much for your time, man. You have been fantastic. You have a wonderful night, and we'll get you back on the show sooner than later.
Awesome. Thank you.
And there you have it, Shortboxed Nation. That is the end of this awesome episode. I mean, let's be real. Gene came through and absolutely did the damn thing. That was a fantastic conversation, if I do say so myself. If you feel the same way, if you're just as hyped, do me a favor. Help us spread the word, all right? Share this episode with a friend or someone you know that loves comics as much as we do. Maybe you know someone that's trying to get into the comic book selling and buying game or trying to step up their game, all right? I think Gene has dropped a lot of helpful gems and pieces of information. So share this episode with that person. And if you're feeling extra generous, take some time and leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Those ratings and reviews mean a lot to us in the sense of it helps us get the word out about the podcast, right? It's like Amazon reviews. You know, like some people go on Amazon and they don't buy the product until they check out the reviews. It's sort of like that way for podcasting, all right? We need your help getting the word out that this show is worthwhile and worthy of people to listen to. So leave us a rating and review if you haven't already. We'd appreciate that. And as far as next week's show, you can look forward to us recapping our favorite headlines, announcements, previews, and all that stuff that come out of San Diego Comic-Con. Since this episode is dropping on the Wednesday of San Diego Comic-Con, that's where our focus will be, and that's what you can expect next week. So hopefully that's something that you guys look forward to. I want to see all the new comic series coming out. I want to see if there's any trailers. We got you covered for that. That'll be next Wednesday. You know what to do. Stay tuned to this podcast feed. Come back next Wednesday or check out our Patreon. All right? If you can't wait a week, if you're impatient as hell like I am, might I recommend that you consider joining the Shortbox family over on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/theshortbox. That is your best bet to get extra episodes, bonus content, video podcasts, invites to our live streams, etc. You get so many perks and rewards when you join the Shortbox family over on our Patreon. So if you want more content, more Shortbox content to hold you over, patreon.com/theshortbox. Sign up for a month, see if it's a good fit for you. If not, go ahead and cancel. Or do as Gene says, just walk away. If you're not a fan of the Patreon, walk away. It's all good. But you won't have to walk away because I guarantee you'll enjoy all the different content and personal rewards that our patrons get treated to. Regardless if you join the Patreon or not, I appreciate all of you that tune in every week. We couldn't do it without you. I'll catch you next Wednesday. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, go read your comics, and continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. I'll talk to you next week. Peace.